Here on the Lead with Giants TV. My guest this evening is Barry Banther, and he is the author of A Leader's Gift, How to Earn the Right to Be Followed. He's our guest this evening, and this is his book. You can purchase that on Amazon.com. It's a wonderful read, a lot of inspiration, and as you guys know, I do go through a lot of leadership books, and this is one of the best ones out there for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cal. Thank
So
you very much.
Barry, welcome to our show. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a little hot. We're still I reside in Florida, and so it's still really late summer for us, so it's warm.
Okay, you guys getting some humidity that we sometimes feel here in Texas.
That's true. And Texas can brag they've got the worst humidity. I'll accept that.
I'll take it. Liz, thank you so much for joining us this evening as well.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Hi, Liz. Nice to see you again.
You too, Barry.
Great. Well, Barry, thank you so much for being. This is your second time on the show, and we will do more of that in the future. Really, every time I sit by my peaceful, quiet moment and read about your book is inspiration to me as a leader. Talk to us about there's many places where there are some challenges, probably more than some challenges, but challenges in leadership where uh, there's not enough leaders that walk the talk. They know what to say, how to say it, and give the pep rally speech and write emails about culture and engagement, but the day-to-day behavior is missing, and from an employee's perspective, it's very frustrating. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, Tal, you're exactly right. One of the things that I discovered years ago in a large organization, some of the Fortune 100 companies that I consulted to, the CEO, the C-suite, maybe even some of the directors, they get it. They go to the conferences, they read the books, and they give the speeches, and in the employee meetings, they talk about it. But it doesn't filter down to the line management, to those directors who have several managers reporting to them, who have several supervisors reporting to them. And so the challenge is, how do we get the best leadership principles at the level that it's going to impact the rank and file workers? We're here in the middle of September, and the feds have been looking and doing their surveys, the federal banks, in terms of what does the job market look like. And so while the economy's been moving along, limping at sort of a small pace, we could say, the most recent research from the Fed suggests that about a fifth of employers are actually cutting back on hiring. Another fifth are trimming from some full-time down to part-time. And so it's difficult today to get a read on how many jobs are going to be added. So what a lot of companies are doing, they're just trying to keep the employees they have, but they're frustrated, and they say, we can't find good people. Well, you don't find good people. We talk about this in the book. You develop good people. And the development doesn't happen at the C-suite level. They've got to buy into it. They've got to believe in it. But the real walk and walking the talk, Tal, needs to happen at the line level, where those line managers who are treating their supervisors in a way as a model that will cause them to react the same way to the people that they lead. So it is a problem today. It affects productivity. It affects turnover. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, was to try to give a tool that could be used at every level in a company or an enterprise to develop talent, not to discover it, not to manage the talent, but to develop the talent. And I think that 5 gifts we talk about in the book are the most important things you can do. But there's one more thing to say quickly. If you're going to be able to truly walk the talk, you've got to begin with this phrase: it is all about me. Think about that. It's all about me. Here's what I mean. Me, the manager, if I'm not willing to get out of the way, if I'm not willing to say, this is about developing a team, it's about investing in them, it's about building them, it's about helping them achieve, if I don't do that, then it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter how many platitudes we put on the wall. So a manager at any level that calls themselves a leader has to begin with saying, this is about me. I've got to lead, not just in what I say, but in my actions. That's step number 1, to really go about earning the right to be followed.
And I really like this because it brings kind of a segue to, you share a practice in your book, kind of a daily practice that leaders can do more, being the kind of the chief encourager in their organization. You share that daily routine. Speak to us about that, because I think a lot of managers and leaders just don't have time, or they're doing more with less nowadays. So they're trying to find a balance between how do I build relationships, and really your book to me is about building relationships with people and making them successful. But how do we overcome this challenge of doing more with less, and then now we have to invest in those relationships?
Well, encouragement may be one of the biggest risks that a leader takes because encouragement only counts. It's only worth something if it happens in the middle of the battle. After the battle, everybody will know what should have been done. There's a great story told about the legendary football coach, Barry Bryant. Now, I know in Texas, you guys don't get too much big-time college football, but here in the South,
Yeah, we gave that up a couple of years ago.
well, of course, the Texas A&M may be a different story this year,
Right.
but here's my point. The legendary Bear Bryant was the coach at the University of Alabama, winning all those national championships. The story goes that a reporter asked Coach Bryant, he said, "Coach, will you not take encouragement from anybody on how to lead this team?" And Coach Bryant stiffened and he said, "Of course I will. Anybody in the state of Alabama can tell me how to manage this team. But I've got two rules. Rule number one, you've got to give me that advice on a Saturday afternoon between 2 and 4 o'clock. And rule number two, you've got 5 seconds. On Sunday morning, I'll know what to do. I don't need encouragement after the fact." So here's why it's a risk, Tal. As a manager, your encouragement has to come in the middle of the battle, not afterwards. I was working with a client who had come through a terrible ordeal. And he said to me, "I really got to work on what I'm going to say at our celebration because I want to encourage the team." And I looked at him and I said to him, "It's too late. They don't need encouragement now. They've won the battle." Encouragement happens when you're out walking the floor, when you're out sitting with those salespeople, when you're riding with that salesperson, when you're sitting in on that production meeting, and you're able to say to the team, "Listen, you're talented, you're smart, you've got a plan, we've got the resources, we can do this." The Gallup organization suggests, Tal, that as many as 50% of employees are disengaged. If you've got 100 people working for you, 50 of them are showing up as late as possible, leaving as soon as possible, doing as little as possible. You've got to engage them. And you have to engage them in the middle of the battle. You've got to encourage them when you're not 100% sure they can do it. Another example is a baseball manager. Pitcher gets in trouble, gets behind on a batter. Does the manager go out on the mound and get in that pitcher's face and say, "Throw a strike or you'll be in the minor leagues forever"? Of course he doesn't. That pitcher would crumble. He looks at that pitcher and says, "Now listen, you're a better pitcher than he is batter. Remember last week in the game that we were playing, they had this same situation? Throw your fastball, come back with a curve, then a changeup, you'll get him." Then a manager does what you can only do in a Major League Baseball park and not get arrested. He reaches over and slaps that pitcher on the butt and walks off, and he's saying to himself as he goes back to the dugout, "Please let him throw a strike, please." He doesn't know he's going to do that.
Right.
The gift of encouragement means that you come alongside your employees when they're in the middle of filling that tough order, in the middle of that tough fabrication project, when they're trying to get that new account, and you're there believing in them and not just cheering, but you're helping them see the strengths that they have. That's the gift of encouragement, and that's how you develop great employees, because they know you've always got their back in the midst of the battle.
It's great. I mean, your passion comes across as you share that vision for encouraging leadership, so I appreciate that.
Barry,
How many employees do you think park their car in the parking lot, Liz, and they're walking into work and they're saying, "I can't wait till somebody discourages me today"? Of course, they walk in there looking to be encouraged. Go ahead, Liz. I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. As you're talking about engagement, can you talk a little bit about how important it is to have the right people in the right roles and recognizing the expertise that people have to offer and making sure they're serving where they feel like they can make a meaningful contribution?
Well, Liz, you put that very well, and you're exactly right. Employee engagement begins with leader engagement. And leader engagement means I have to know my associates. I have to know what their skill sets are. What do they have the skill to do? I have to know what their knowledge is. What do they know about our customers, our industry, our business, our processes? I have to know what their typical attitudes are. What attitudes do they display more than others? Then, Liz, I've got to not only know that about my employee, I've got to take a look at their job. And I've got to help them fit to that job to make sure they're the right person for that job. You're managing this talent all day long. In our management consulting firm, we have a division called Target Recruitment. We do recruitment for our clients. The biggest battle we have is helping that client understand long before we take the first applicant, before you ever have the first employee interview, you've got to know what this job requires. Then you've got to really get to know this applicant, and then you, Mr. Employer, Mr. Manager, Mr. Leader, Ms. Leader, you've got to decide if it's a fit. And then, on top of that, Liz, as the job changes, if you're dealing with a lot of customers, you may have one set of customers that work well with this particular group of your employees and another with the others. There's a recent HBR, Harvard Business Review article that deals with creativity in the workplace. and how you, and I'm not talking about the creativity that creates, new earth-shattering products that'll change the world. Just daily creativity that's necessary to do your job. If you don't have the person with the right skill set, right knowledge, right attitude, assigned to the right team doing the right tasks, then you're sabotaging yourself. And this is why today, as Tal was mentioning a moment ago, as a leader, you've got to be engaged with those employees to really get to know them. And that allows you way ahead of time to know who's the wrong person, who's the wrong person in the wrong seat. They're even on the wrong bus. I was with a client recently, and I asked him, he was a prospect that was becoming a client. And I said, so what's the number one problem you've called me to try to help you solve? And he looked at me and he said, you've got to help me with these employees. He said, I've got a dozen people on my team. 10 of them aren't capable, and that has to change. He paused. I looked at him and I asked this question. Did you hire all 10 of them? Well, of course I hired all 10 of them. And the problem is they can't do the job. Took a deep breath because I didn't have a contract yet, and I looked at him and I said, the problem's not with those employees. The problem's sitting in this room. You didn't hire the right people for the job, and now you're upset that the wrong people you hired don't know how to do the right job. So we have to start with you. You've got to understand what it means to be able to identify the talent, identify the job, marry those two together, and then once you've done that, you've got to coach them to win. So you're exactly right. And in an environment today where there's pressures on the bottom line, there's pressures on the margins on the top line, this is the place that you can get the greatest return on your investment in a business, a professional firm, and that's developing the talent you have by really getting engaged with them.
This is great transition for us because we want to talk more about the coaching and the development and really caring for people in our organization. So we'll do that on segment 2. But we'll finish up here, and thank you, Barry and Liz. We'll close this one. Great thoughts on segment 1.
Thanks, Tal. Thanks, Liz.